Over to you, Jeff.
Thanks so much. The barriers that we're talking about are both physical barriers and metaphorical barriers. We see all kinds of barriers. A cement wall that goes almost half a mile across an aquifer and peat bog. We see silt fence by the hundreds of miles that prevent the frogs and the turtles and the small animals from moving through their natural environment that are all left behind. And the metaphorical part of this is that we see barriers to communication and effective communication. We don't understand why the state and other federal agencies aren't acting on this. So we're continuing our volunteer action. We're recording the permanent impacts, and we proposed a memorandum of agreement with the state that seeks to repair trust, share our knowledge, and eliminate the cultural barriers to communication. Next slide. The challenge is one of communication. It's an information overload. It's complex. It's competing messages. It's a matter of status, cultural status, and lack of trust. Our response is to show up. We have a dedicated group of volunteers that are showing up and saying, what do we need to do to show and make the public and the state aware of these promised conditions have been violated. There was to be no damage. Next slide. There was not to be any permanent issues. And we were assured that to be true. It wasn't. So where can we find trust? Our water connections are broken and we're all suffering. Next slide. There's been 3 civil settlements so far, one for Clearbrook, one for LaSalle, and one for Fond du Lac for the aquifer ruptures. Fines, settlement stipulations were ordered, and also all of those said that there would be no further action by the state of Minnesota. That doesn't mean that we won't take action, because the escape clause is that if new information comes forward that these are bigger problems, new problems occur, or they find that Enbridge and their consultants were dishonest, these can be reopened. We have criminal charges pending in Clearwater County against Enbridge. It's the same condition. They have a year to prove that they tell the truth. We want to challenge that, and we think they're not telling the whole story, and they're taking advantage of some of the physical barriers we have to understanding these things. So we're moving ahead, new information, and we aren't going to allow them to continue to conceal these. Next slide. So we have proposed back in the end of August, really kind of complicated 6-page memorandum agreement. And the principle is do no more harm. We want to get together on this, but let's stop the harm. And we're seeing many of the workings of this summer that are investigation or restoration are causing continued trouble. We need to continue thermal investigations. There's such an extraordinary tool. It's easy to do from drones. We can identify these sites that are problems. And we need a complete failure analysis that identifies all of these problems across the headwaters before they move ahead with line 5. They could repeat these same mistakes if we aren't diligent about controlling this. So the MOA has been sent. Next slide. We haven't heard back. We've sent it to the PCA commissioner, the DNR commissioner, the governor, Keith Ellison. Who's going to respond? Next slide. We're hopeful, but we've taken another track and done a federal approach. And we've asked our congressional delegation, and Betty McCollum has written letters now to the Corps of Engineers and the US EPA to address our concerns. We're waiting to hear back. Next slide. Who will respond? Thank you.